you know, do it. It feels like it's so simple to just like Nike, just do it. Just do it. Just
Yeah.
try. Is it that hard to really and I know I'm kind of talking from a general aspect cuz it's hard to really dive into the details and explain what I'm really trying to say, but man, just to show some heart and I feel like there's always a lot of trickery with Kyle Shanahan. Like he's always doing the outside of the box thinking, always playing chess. And I know a lot, and I'm not talking about the vanilla scheme that he's playing because right now it feels a little vanilla, but it feels like the throw to Warner. Oh, they'll never expect this going to Warner. They'll never expect this deep shot to Ray Ray. It feels like it's always they'll never expect it. It reminds me of Harbaugh when he threw the fade to Crabtree. We weren't practicing no fade in the corner the whole entire year. Why are you going to try to be brilliant like in times where you kind of really don't have to like Brandon Ayuk, for example, man, he runs beautiful routes. Why is he not being utilized? Why is he not like just being like? I mean, there's times where I see Debo running routes where I'm like, how come Ayuk isn't running those routes? Debo isn't the best at just go and make that sharp cut. Um, man, it's just a lot, man. It's just a lot. There's a lot of I don't know, he gets kind of glorified for scheming stuff up, but it feels like there'll be the wrong guys in the best scheme or vice versa. And then it'll be like the best guys. It's like everything is lightweight backwards. And it's like he tricks himself, kind of. It's when it's hard, when you're confused and you're hard to even, when it's hard to diagnose, even when you watched it a few times, that just tells me there's confusion, and there shouldn't be confusion or searching for identity and all these fundamental basics, penalties, just continuous. All these things shouldn't be there after this many years. So that's the thing that really tells me bad coaching.
Hey, before Amin goes, gotta say what's good to Amin. But before you go, I just want to say I think we have to lower our expectations. And I said this to Celts off air. But if Jimmy is average, if he's decent, if he's decent, if he's garbage, how can we really expect this offense to flourish? You could have the best play call, but if Warner drops the ball, oh, well, you shouldn't have Warner in there. Well, he's on the 46-man active roster. He's the backup tight end to Kittle. He's got to be out there. And I just think if Jimmy is limited, why are we expecting this offense to really perform at its peak? I don't think we really can. And I think Kelts mentioned rhythm. Well, Shanahan wants to run the ball. We couldn't do that yesterday. But if you look at Shanahan's drives, I should say Jimmy's drives, when we scored those touchdowns, the offense looked in rhythm to me. I just feel like we're at a point now where the 49ers can't beat themselves. Turnovers, penalties, not executing. We can't do all that stuff and still expect to win the game. And let's be real. Yesterday, the 49ers got punched in their mouth by the Atlanta Falcons, and we didn't know what to do. If you would have told me that the Falcons ran the ball 40 times on us and they only threw the ball 14 times,
And
I
it's like
wouldn't
they
believe
weren't gashing us,
they
Jay. Like
weren't. They
their
weren't. It
running
was
back
like 3 yards a
averaging,
carry.
2-3 yards so it's
Right.
like,
And
but
whenever we would hit their running backs, they always went forward. So, whatever that is, injuries, whatever. I know people say, hey, that's an excuse, but that's reality. Depth is
Hey,
good until you have to use it on a full time basis. If that depth comes in 10 to 15% of the plays, oh, that's all great. But when they have to play the whole game, I mean, at some point, you know, they're not going to be able to play at the same level as a Bosa, as a Armstead, as a Kinlaw for the full game. It's just not going to happen. So I just think we got to lower our expectations. And this offense missed on some plays, absolutely, but I don't see how you can really blame Shanahan. If you want to blame him because he's the head coach, hey, okay, but he wasn't out there dropping passes. He wasn't out there making penalties. So
I know, but he was the one drawing up the plays on some of these third downs where we got
right,
plenty of time and it didn't seem like anyone was open. I got to
right,
wait for all 22 to go on NFL Game Pass to verify it, but there was a few third downs where Jimmy had time in the pocket. He's surveying didn't look like anyone was open. So those situations I do put on Kyle, and we're going to kick it to Amin. Amin, we're talking negatives. Well, we talk turnovers and anything you want to talk about negatives, but I also want to address Niner Sickness's comment here. I would like to know, at what point did the 49er fans settle for mediocre quarterback play? Most of us haven't. Most of us haven't. And that's why we've been disappointed with Jimmy Garoppolo's performance for years. And that's why they went and drafted Trey Lance. So most of us, I would say even the organization didn't want to settle for mediocre. That's why they made the move to get Trey Lance.
Right.
But Amin, let's kick it to you. We're talking negatives. What did you think about this loss to the Falcons?
It sucked because this was a game that you were favored to win on paper. It was a favorable matchup, and you were expected to win this football game. By today, I expected the 49ers to be 4-2. We're not. We're 3-3. We're still number one in the division, so it's not all bad. But this was a game that the 49ers should have won. And the reason why they lost was self-inflicted wounds, shooting yourself in the foot. You look at offensively, right? I thought Jimmy Garoppolo played a pretty good game. The receivers weren't catching passes. That Ray or McLeod pass, Jimmy put it in a spot where McLeod could make a play on it. He wasn't able to make a play on it. That pass to Charlie Warner, Jimmy had a beautiful throw. Charlie Warner wasn't able to make a play on it. Even with those 2 interceptions, I thought Jimmy Garoppolo had a pretty good game. But the receivers weren't helping him out. And offensively, we just weren't stepping up, right? And if you expect your defense to dominate every single week, that's not going to happen. At a certain point, there are going to be games where your defense is not going to be as dominant, especially with the injuries that we had yesterday.
Especially when you're out 6 starters on the defensive side.
Especially with the injuries that you had yesterday. So the offense in that situation has to step up, right? And I thought for the most part, Jimmy Garoppolo did his part, but the receivers and the offense as a whole didn't do what they were supposed to do, which was catch passes, make plays. They weren't able to do that. So from that aspect, I think the negatives obviously were offensively, you struggled mightily, and your defense obviously didn't have their greatest game. So now it's up to your offense to see, hey, offense, can you step up and can you make plays for the lack of your defense right now? And the offense wasn't able to do that. This game really reminded me offensively of the Arizona game last year. It reminded me of the Arizona game last year because the fumbles obviously the fumbles we had last year in that Arizona game, the wide open drop passes. This reminded me of the Arizona game last year. Jeff Wilson's 2 fumbles hurt us against the Falcons. I mean, just shooting yourselves in the foot. Self-inflicted wounds. That's what really hurt this football team offensively. And then defensively, missed opportunities on third down. We've been talking about it since week 1. Since week 1. Even in the games that the 49ers have won, we've been talking about on third down, stupid penalties, missed tackles. Fred Warner missed a tackle on third down. Just make the stop on third down. And it's just stupid. It's the way that the 49ers, screw up on third down is by penalties and missed tackles. They'll be right there on the play. It'll be Fred Warner screwing up or missing a tackle. Like, self-inflicted wounds defensively, self-inflicted
or not containing Marcus Mariota, right? On the third and 13,
right?
It's part the middle of the defensive line, and Mariota's able to scramble right up the gut.
Yes,
to convert on third and long.
And I don't know if any of you guys said this before, but what this game reminded me of is that Packers NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers. What this game reminded me of was the 49ers versus Packers NFC Championship game. Marcus Mariota threw only 14 passes, didn't have an incompletion until the 4th quarter. Just how in the NFC Championship game, Jimmy Garoppolo only threw 8 passes, and what we did to the Packers was constantly run the football down their throat. And the thing was, the Falcons weren't getting like 4 yards per carry. They just kept pounding the football down the 49ers' throat, just kept running it and running it and running it and running it. This game reminded me defensively of the NFC Championship game. Marcus Mariota threw a limited amount of passes, and the Falcons just continued to pound the football down the 49ers' throats. There was a lot of... I want to
ask you guys, did you guys think that the fumble that Jeff Wilson had in the first half kind of spooked Kyle Shanahan away from the run, or do you think that was more due to the fact that we were down? I think we might have been down 14 at that point, or anyway, we were down. Right?
I think it was because we were down. Because we've seen times where we've had fumbles before in the past, and Kyle Shanahan continues to stick with the run game because that's his bread and butter, right?
Oh,
But when you're
what'd you
down by
think, Jay? What'd you think, Jay?
I mean, it was still early. I mean, it wasn't even the second quarter yet. I just think we couldn't really establish the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's what football comes down to. We got punched in the mouth at the line of scrimmage. The offensive line couldn't really create any lanes for the runners to really run through, and I think that's what it came down to. I give credit, to the Atlanta Falcons. They get paid too. They're playing hard for head coach Arthur Smith. And they dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and that's why we couldn't run the ball. I would have liked us to continue running the ball, or at least use Jordan Mason. Tevin Coleman didn't have it yesterday. Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't have it, so it would have been nice for Shanahan to use other backs. But it's at this point in the season, it seems like that's asking a little bit too much of Shanahan, because he has his guys that he trusts and he doesn't trust, and right now Coleman and Jeff Wilson Jr. are the guys he trusts in the backfield.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah, go, please.
I
go,
feel like
Rich.
from the first drive, what was it? One of the first plays. I think Kyle instantly like, oh shit. Okay, it's gonna be one of these games. Hey, we're a little depleted on defense, but you've seen it from the first drive. We haven't seen that all year. So we're ranked number one on defense, and we've been, that's been our strength. So to see something like that on the first drive, I think everybody's seen it. It was probably a shock to everybody, not just the fans. Like, oh dang, and so I think Shanahan probably thought, hey man, it's going to be a Jimmy game, and then of course the fumble. To me, it was reminiscent of when Debo fumbled in Chicago. It just like Jay said, with Jimmy, maybe the expectations are too high. I look behind here at these pictures over here, man, and I just I can't let go of what I fell in love with.
Legends.
Hey, I know it was how many years ago. I know it's a new day.
And walking
I
through that
know,
locker room
I know, I know it's a salary cap. I know it's a commercialized world that we're headed into. And back in the day, it was blood, guts, and glory. And today is a different world. So maybe my old school mentality, expectations of certain things, maybe, are a little unrealistic. But, with Jimmy, man, it's just tough. You can't make the basic mistakes. You can't turn the ball over, and we know it. Kyle's been preaching it the whole time. It's one of his biggest things is turnovers. And once you get a fumble, a couple picks, some drop passes, some penalties, we had a little bit of it all in this game. And Kyle Shanahan, clock management. It's like everybody equally did their parts, but like Jay says, there needs to be big props to Atlanta because I think Atlanta, what they lost. I think they lost the 3 games they lost by like 11 points through the whole year.
Close.
Every
Yeah.
single game they've been. It's reminiscent of when the Niners were first getting going. They would always be in every single game, And hey, props to Atlanta. I've picked them almost throughout the whole year as like one of my underdog picks. When I'm on a Niner Beto's show, we do a NFL game predictions, and they've been from the beginning of the year one of my go-to underdog picks. Just believe in them. So props to Atlanta. Yeah, I think Shanahan definitely got spooked with the fumble and the drive by Atlanta. So
Hey, I agree with you, Kelts. Everyone watching, take a moment to like this video. Let's get those.